Hey everyone, Pugs here with two new reviews for y'all. Today I'm covering the Pink Purloiner and Squid Wood. I already know that people don't like Squid Wood. Hell, just look at my comments and we've got a tier 1 hater down there. Yeah, I see you talking your shit about Squid Wood. Don't think I don't. The Pink Purloiner has far less haters comparatively. In fact, I don't think it has any haters, but that's because this episode is kind of forgotten more than anything, I think, because I never see anyone talk about it, like, ever, even if it is a decent SpongeBob and Patrick friendship episode. But I'll save all those thoughts for the real review. Instead, let me just go ahead and say that, as always, a thank you goes out to all of y'all who are watching today, to all of y'all who have been liking and commenting on my videos, and now, let's just get right into it. Our first episode of today is The Pink Purloiner. Okay, first off, that's such a fun episode title. I love it. I love alliteration. So, as I was saying in this intro, I think this episode is kind of forgotten, but also not. See, I think All Reliable is pretty memorable, but the rest of the episode, not so much, at least from my experience. And you know what? That's fair. Nothing in this episode particularly stands out when I think of it, probably because whenever I think of this episode, I also think of The Secret Box or Big Pink Loser. But that doesn't mean that The Pink Purloiner is bad. In fact, I actually find this episode to be pretty good. As the episode begins, I'm already happy because it's showing SpongeBob and Patrick jellyfishing. Even though that's such an iconic hobby for them, we don't see these two doing it all that much, like I've said before. Same thing goes for SpongeBob's bubble blowing, or even Squidward's clarinetting during some stretches of the show. I liked all the designs of the exotic jellyfish in this segment too. Watching SpongeBob succeed and Patrick fail at jellyfishing wasn't extremely entertaining, but as I'm prone to saying, it wasn't unentertaining either. And we got 3 beautiful backgrounds out of this bit too, so that's always a win. Also, just watching SpongeBob and Patrick ride the bus, Bikini Bottom has a pretty good public transportation system. My hometown would never. Hell, I just had to drive 2 minutes to a park where I could literally walk to if there were fucking sidewalks. Ridiculous. Anyway, before I get on that rant, because I'll be here all day if I do, let me just say that the backgrounds in this episode are really great. I love the shot of SpongeBob's house at night and then the next morning, and these are standard shots, but that just goes to show the absolute quality of these backgrounds. Anywho, it's during this next morning that the Pink Purloiner really gets rolling. SpongeBob's net, All Reliable, ends up missing, and see, I love episodes like this, like these kinds with an air of mystery or where a mystery is the whole plot. I just love mysteries, period. So I'm gonna ask you all to keep this in mind for when I eventually get to Patty Caper. And getting back to the episode, I love how I feel like a detective while watching this episode too, trying to solve the mystery alongside SpongeBob. And we get some pretty believable reasons as to why the culprit might be Patrick, given his suspicious dialogue from earlier, but we're not quite there yet, because SpongeBob isn't even suspecting him yet. I love the time card of 1 pair of pants later. That was pretty funny and creative. And then I love how with no preamble, SpongeBob is telling Patrick about his stolen net, and the two start putting up posters badly. The part where SpongeBob hijacks the news is pretty fun, especially once Mr. Krabs shows up for basically no reason. And then the part with SpongeBob and Patrick on the phone is pretty funny, and I love SpongeBob's little realization in bed, which returns us to the point I made earlier about an air of mystery and intrigue. We're then treated to another gorgeous background in the following scene, where SpongeBob tries to get Patrick to indirectly confess to stealing his net. This scene is absolutely hilarious, especially as SpongeBob grows increasingly frustrated and Confess-a-Bear starts sounding genuinely threatening. And then once Patrick confesses his secret, SpongeBob running around feeling disgusting is just too funny. Really, this episode has some woefully underrated comedy. It's so good. I love when SpongeBob comes over to Patrick's rock and Patrick's like, "Don't come in, there's a radiation leak." Like, what even? And then Patrick literally growing another arm just to reluctantly comply with SpongeBob's demands is great. This episode is also the source of a pretty popular gag of Patrick having nothing on his to-do list, which I didn't know till I rewatched this one. You could have told me that gag was from season 3 and I would have believed you. Well, I would have believed you until I did my rewatch of every episode at least, but my point stands. I love SpongeBob dressing up in a disguise and sounding British to try and get Patrick to confess to stealing All Reliable, and then I love his dramatics once he believes the truth has come out. Even better, I love Patrick's unflappability once he gets over his shock. See, unlike the secret box, Patrick's attitude here is 100% justified. I also thought it was wholesome that Patrick went through all the trouble of making a gift for SpongeBob, and then the whole part where he decides to leave is hilarious, especially with Patrick's enhanced vocabulary. I don't know where this trend of Patrick speaking super sophisticatedly when he's miffed or is saying goodbye or something of the sort came from, because it's all over these season 4 episodes, but I love it. And then I love the ending of the episode and the final reveal that SpongeBob left his net on the bus. I also think it's hilarious that apparently this is something that's happened before, not just leaving the net, but also all the dramatics that follow. I love how Nat is completely over this, which yeah, I'd be too because that's annoying as hell for a likely underpaid bus driver such as him. I also love the continuity of Nat being the bus driver, and then the episode ends nice and wholesomely with SpongeBob and Patrick going jellyfishing again. The Pink Purloiner is a pretty good episode that I honestly have no problems with. Back before I did this project of reviewing every episode, I had this episode in my good tier, and I literally have no idea why. Because the plot is excellent, the humor is excellent, the atmosphere is excellent, and no one annoys me even though this is an episode where SpongeBob and Patrick fight. So that's pretty impressive because I usually end up very annoyed with one of the parties involved, typically Patrick. The only bad thing I can say about this episode is that the very beginning of it is a little dull, but other than that, this episode is really great. I'd say it works well in my amazing tier, where it comes in with a score of 9 out of 10. Up next is Squid Wood. Alright, so I'm gonna need for everyone to put the pitchforks away when I say this. I like this episode. Sorry, not sorry, I do! I think it's fun and funny, and I know at least one of y'all is probably not very happy about this considering how much you've said that you just like the episode. Sorry pal, that just ain't me. And let me tell you why. The beginning of Squidwood demonstrates yet again why this show can be educational, because tell me a kid's cartoon that talks about circadian rhythms like SpongeBob SquarePants does? That's right, there's none. Speaking of the beginning of this episode, it's just funny to me because why is SpongeBob even in Squidward's house? And his whole "I waited for you to stop sleeping like you asked" line is pretty funny and raises many questions. Yeah, I'd say that this episode is probably the beginning of SpongeBob's creepiness factor being amped up to 11, which I know is a big complaint for people watching episodes like Boating Buddies, and you know, I'm completely fine with that. This shit is funny to me. And SpongeBob has always been a bit of a weirdo, so this really isn't all that much of a stretch for him. Anyway, the whole "I'll see you later" running gag, or whatever you want to call it, is nice because it shows the repetitiveness of Squidward's interactions with SpongeBob. The way SpongeBob just keeps appearing in Squidward's life is just hilarious, and you can feel the way that Squidward is losing his mind over it. I would too if my neighbor literally showed up at my bed, in the ground, in my flower, in my art. Just horrible, yet hilarious. I think the best one has to be when Squidward's in the bath and SpongeBob's pressed up against the window in the creepiest way possible. Squidward's scream and visual expression is absolutely hilarious, especially together with the dramatic cue. A nice callback to Have You Seen the Snail, honestly. SpongeBob is very childish in this episode, given his obsession with playing, but I think it works well. The child-adult line is in balance, and that's all I care about. After a few minutes, we're introduced to the eponymous wooden puppet of Squidward, Squidwood, as I will be calling him, because I think it's hilarious. I'm cool with the episode taking some time to get to this point, because there needed to be an explanation for why SpongeBob made a Squidward puppet, or maybe not, since, like I said, we're entering the era of SpongeBob being hilariously creepy. Squid's visit, just wait till I get to you. Anyway, these first couple minutes are super funny anyway, so again, I don't mind. Squidward's reaction to the puppet is also hilarious. Roger Bumpus truly has got some lungs on him. Sean Shamel is shaking in his boots as we speak. I also love the voice of Squidward. It's nice to see Squidward be overjoyed by the puppet taking his role too, to the point of literally pole vaulting into his house for no reason, and the look that SpongeBob and Squidward share after that is hilarious. Moving on, once we get to the Krusty Krab, things continue to be very enjoyable for me. I love the absolute awkwardness of Squidward handing the two customers their Krabby Patties. Like, it's more awkward in-universe than out-of-universe, and I get no secondhand embarrassment from it, so maybe that's why I like it so much. I'm of two minds when it comes to how I feel about the townspeople in this episode. On one hand, the fact that they like a puppet more than the actual Squidward is absolutely asshole behavior, especially as they continually insult Squidward to his face. On the other hand, a lot of what the townspeople say in this episode is pretty funny. I also like that the breaking point for Squidward is once his ego and pride really start getting wounded, especially once Nancy pulls out $300. Like, I understand getting mad after that one. Like, give me that money. Anyway, once Squidward tries to get back to work, his fake cheer is just funny to me, especially once his parade is immediately rained on as he gets assigned to busboy duty, and don't think I didn't notice the song playing in the background at this part. Title card to what painters, anyone? I love how random the plot becomes as Squidward just starts dancing. It's not particularly funny, but it is entertaining. Personally, I do not like watching people dance when I eat. Maybe I'm traumatized by middle school, though. Squidward trying to get into the dancing is pretty good, though, especially with the audience reaction and their roasting. I also love all the water sound effects. They're very satisfying. This show really has some good sound design. Like, seriously, I love it a lot. It makes the show immersive in a way that other shows do not. Finally, Squidward reaches his breaking point, and seeing him go ballistic is amazing. The wider shots of SpongeBob just staring blankly as Squidward attacks Squid Wood just makes the whole scene so funny to me. And I love how the music agent just shows up out of nowhere. Also, speaking of the music agent, did you know that they were voiced by Tom Kenny? Usually I'm pretty good at recognizing Tom Kenny's voice, but man, that threw me for a loop when I was looking at the credits for this episode. Anyway, I love how delusional Squidward is when talking to the agent. It makes me think of Culture Shock, and the music agents themselves is just hilarious. They remind me of Monty P. Moneybags from Artist Unknown. I also really like the very ending of this episode, SpongeBob pulling out a new puppet SpongeBob. The laughing bit is just hilarious because you know Squidward's about to lose it, especially with those eye twitches, and especially because everything pretty much goes back to square one for Squidward. And even though SpongeBob's laugh can be annoying, it very much is not in this last little bit, and when an episode ends with some Puka A, you know it's probably a good ending. I have not sourced this statement, so don't quote me on that. Squid Wood is a really great episode that I have no problems with at all. Whenever I watch season 4, it's definitely up there. And as you could tell by some of the things I said during this review, this episode reminds me a lot of many other episodes. This is usually the case for any episode that I watch, but I usually try to keep the other episode references to a minimum. This show quite literally has over 560 episodes, counting segments, not episode pairs, so it makes sense that I'd be seeing similarities. Speaking of similarities, Chef Bob is quite similar to this episode, except in this episode, Squidward is not a jerk and he doesn't turn on his creator. Anyway, I have no real problems with this episode and I enjoy it so much. And one last thing, but I really like the art in this episode. I don't know, it's cute. This episode definitely deserves to be in the amazing tier where it comes in with a score of 9.3 out of 10. As always, gotta end this video with some closing thoughts of mine. So, I get the feeling that both of today's episodes are episodes that people might love or hate. The reasoning for Squidward is fairly obvious, I'd say. People don't like SpongeBob being creepy, or they think that Squidward was tortured, or whatever the fuck. I don't know. These criticisms are valid, but I'm kind of tired of hearing them, you know? Like, yeah, okay, SpongeBob's too creepy. Y'all have been saying this for over 10 years. It's tiresome. God, literally just today, as in the day I write the script, someone asked me if I only like the first 3 seasons or if I like the entire show. That's how fucking annoying season 1 through 3 dick writers are. They have poisoned public perception for the rest of us. And yes, I know I just jumped to talking about something different, but this is my closing thoughts and I have ADHD. What do you want from me? But before I make this an entire rant, let me just end the video here so that I may prepare for ending season 4. I'll see y'all then.